the black sun rose. Not in the sky, but in prophecy. For centuries, the hollow flame slumbered in forgotten verse, sealed beneath broken cathedrals and crumbling bastions. But with every cultist's death, with every ritual disrupted, the flame grew more aware. Vorthan's servants no longer whispered, they marched. And Thalanor began to burn. 3 days after the battle at Emberreach, the paladins gathered at a cliffside watchtower above the sapphire expanse. Beneath them, the ocean lapped against jagged cliffs. Beyond the horizon loomed Isle Nairos, once a holy city, now covered in shadow. Smoke rose from its temples. Kaelin stood in silence, Solbrand sheathed but trembling at his side. 3 chapters remain, all active, all attacking. Elira held a scorched scroll, delivered by Raven, the Temple of the Silver Veil, the Bastion of Stonewake, and the Dawnguard Chapel at Skyhaven, all struck in a single night. Tharos spat into the sea. Coordinated. Means the hollow sanctum gave the order. They know we're coming. Kaelin turned, eyes grim. Then we split. Will Elira? The Temple of the Silver Veil, the city of Velrun, shimmered with divine wards, its spires once channels of Seraphin's light. Now, fire coiled through its alleys. Cultists had breached the temple's core, performing rites atop the Veil Mirror pool, an ancient conduit of pure light. Elira arrived with a host of battle priestesses, her censer glowing brighter than ever. She lifted the light-shard sigil, which floated above her hand, responding to the sacred air. In the reflection pool, she saw not herself, but Vorthan's shadow. It hissed through her voice. Even mercy burns when bent too long. She banished it with a chant. Veilmother, send the storm. A tempest of holy wind tore through the sanctuary. Lightning fell from sky to spire, shattering corrupted sigils. Cultists screamed as their shadows were peeled away, leaving husks behind. But atop the grand altar, a flame-touched oracle unleashed a final curse, splitting the air with a shriek. Elira faced her alone, calling down radiant bolts to pierce the beast's burning soul. When the battle ended, Velrun still smoked, but the temple held. Tharos, the vault of Stonewake, the dwarven city, lay beneath Mount Gorin, carved from bedrock and sanctified with runes of endurance. Tharos arrived as the cult cracked through the outer defenses, wielding infernal burrowers and molten horrors. "Not in my halls," he roared. With a company of stone oath paladins, he repelled the first wave, hammer glowing with divine pulses. As the cult's ashborn giants breached the inner gate, Tharos invoked Durak directly. The ground obeyed. Stone rose to form a barricade. Lava congealed beneath his feet. He chanted the oath of earth and struck down the lead giant, his hammer ringing like the birth of a mountain. In the depths he found a desecrated reliquary, its contents burned away, except one scroll protected by divine shell. It read, "Only 3 may seal the sanctum, but 1 must fall." Tharos grunted. "That's not happening. Not yet." Kaelin, the Dawnguard Chapel at Skyhaven, high in the cliffs where morning first kissed Thalanor. Skyhaven's chapel blazed with black flame. The chapter master, once Kaelin's mentor, now stood corrupted at its heart, his face hidden behind a mask of scorched bronze. "You disappoint me, Kaelin," the traitor intoned. "The light is not gone. It has changed. Adapt or burn." Kaelin's forces clashed blade to blade with the cult's elite guard. Warriors blessed by the black sun. He fought with fire in his blood and Alien's voice in his heart. Solbrand burned with righteous fury. As the traitor unleashed a void storm upon the altar, Kaelin invoked the Sunburst Creed, a battle hymn that caused his blade to erupt in golden flame. He severed the heretic's mask in a final blow, revealing a face too twisted to recognize. Skyhaven held, but Kaelin's eyes dimmed. He was family. This war is claiming too much. They reunited at the ruins of a forgotten outpost, where lead lines crossed and the sky pulsed violet in unnatural rhythm. The codex now glowed without touch. Its newest prophecy burned in fresh script. When the third seal is broken, the hollow sanctum shall rise above the sea. The flame Eater will breathe once more. Tharos placed the recovered scroll beside it. And this one says one of us must fall. Elira clenched her fists. Lies, prophecies bend. They are warnings, not commands. Kael remained silent for a long time. Or their choices, sacrifices. He looked toward the horizon. A darkness now floated where no island had before. The hollow sanctum had risen. An obsidian fortress hovered above a churning whirlpool, kept aloft by black lee lines. Towers of burned bone jutted skyward, and flame poured from its heart in slow spirals of smoke. Around it circled black, winged beasts and twisted remnants of Thalanor's fallen orders. From within the central spire, Vorthon whispered, "Come then, little lights. I remember your gods. I remember the screams. I have new names for them now." As the paladins prepared their assault, their gods answered. Kael saw Elion's sun burning clear for the first time in weeks. Elira heard Seraphine's voice in the tide, promising clarity. Tharos felt Durak's presence in the mountain, urging him to endure. They would not run. They would not falter. The Light of Three would march on the hollow sanctum. One last battle. The sky wept ash as the paladins approached the hollow sanctum. Floating on blackly, lines above the sea, the fortress loomed like a dead star, its towers shaped from obsidian and bone, its walls burning without flame. From its heart pulsed waves of warped energy, darkening the clouds and stealing color from the world. At its base, the sea churned around a maelstrom vortex, pulling in ships and debris as if feeding an unseen hunger. And above it all, in the highest spire, waited Vorthon the Flame Eater, awakening fully for the first time in centuries. The paladins stood on the edge of a precipice, watching as the final beacon of Thalanor's light was consumed in shadow. "We'll never get close by air or ship," Elira said grimly. "The whirlpool would crush us." And the skies cursed. Tharos grunted. "Then we go through. Beneath the sea there were tunnels, ancient passages carved by the gods during the second sundering, meant as escape routes should Vorthon ever rise again." Kael led the way, torch in one hand, Solbrand in the other, its light cutting the abyssal dark. The tunnels wreathed with corrupted magic. Walls bled, and echoes of weeping followed them like ghosts. They fought things down there, things without form. Shadows with teeth, memories turned into claws. Elira's prayers kept the party safe, forming bubbles of light that repelled the worst. Finally, after what felt like days beneath the sea, they emerged within the hollow sanctum's underbelly. Inside, the sanctum pulsed like a heart. Corridors curved in unnatural spirals. The very geometry rebelled against logic. Doors opened into themselves, rooms shifted when unobserved. It was as though the fortress dreamed, and they were unwanted thoughts. "We're being tested," Kael whispered. "No," Elira said. "Being invited." They fought cultists mutated into beasts, flaming knights who bled molten gold, and possessed relics turned into traps. Kaelin's sword sang with divine fury. Elira's censer unleashed radiant storms. Tharos's hammer shattered walls and bones alike. At every step, the light-shard sigil reacted, glowing, guiding, warning. The grand spiral, after ascending a staircase that defied gravity, they reached the grand spiral. A vast central chamber coiled like a serpent. Hovering in its center was a massive glyph made of burning, script the final seal between the material realm and Vorthon's true form. Guarding it stood the Herald Reborn, not a mortal now, but a flaming construct of armor and void, wielding a spear of obsidian fused with divine bone. "I was light once," the herald intoned. "Now I am the flame that devours it. This is your end." The battle erupted in chaos. The herald moved like lightning, teleporting between strikes. Elira was thrown into a wall, ribs cracking. Tharos stood guard over her, absorbing blow after blow. Kael alone chased the herald, clashing blade against spear in bursts of holy light and void flame. Every blow unraveled reality. Walls cracked, time stuttered, sound bent. But then Elira rose, bloody and defiant, sigil in hand. "Veil Mother," she whispered, "break this illusion." A wave of clarity washed over the chamber. The herald faltered. Kael seized the moment and drove Solbrand through its chest. Light exploded in every direction. The herald howled, and vanished in a burst of divine fire. The final seal cracked. The glyph split. The sanctum shook. Cracks spread through its spires, revealing a void behind the stone. Not nothingness, but a place that hated being forgotten. A voice boomed across the sanctum CO ocean. "Be-Jejidi." Kael turned to the others. "This is it. The Codex said one of us may fall." "I don't believe in fate," Elira said, gripping his arm. "Only in choice." Tharos placed a hand on both their shoulders. "Then let's choose to win. Together." They stepped through the broken seal into the final chamber. The heart of the sanctum. The sanctum's heart was a throne of fire, obsidian and bone. On it sat Vorthon the Flame-Eater, titanic in form, armored in scorched metal, his face hidden behind a mask of ever-burning cinders. His voice echoed like a dying sun, 3 flames, 1 light, and still you hope. "I remember your gods. I killed their angels. I burned their temples. And I shall consume you two." He rose. The room warped. Walls melted. The battlefield became a sky of falling ash and shattered memory. The final battle began. Vorthon fought with power older than flame. He conjured sun-black firestorms, eating divine spells. He reversed holy blessings, causing pain instead of healing. He walked through wards and deflected relics with a word. The paladins held nothing back. Kael invoked the full power of Solbrand, unleashing pillars of searing light that left permanent scars on Vorthon's armor. Elira wielded the light shard sigil directly, channeling radiant winds that shredded shadows and dispelled illusions. Tharos became a wall of will, his hammer ringing with Durac's final command. A battle hymn that shattered every false idol Vorthon summoned. But the Flame-Eater adapted. He split into 3 forms, each mocking one of their gods, a burning angel of fallen Elion. A storm twisted into a noose, a mountain cracked and crumbling. Each paladin faced their god's defiled image, and each in turn destroyed it. But Vorthon laughed through it all. "You do not kill the flame. You feed it." Then he struck. A massive burst of void fire engulfed them. Elira shielded Kael with her body. Tharos dove into the blast. When the smoke cleared, Tharos stood at the edge of the throne, bloodied, burned, but holding Vorthon's arm pinned. "Strike him," he growled. Kaelin's eyes filled with tears. "Tharos." "Doit," Kael lipped. And Solbrand drove into Vorthon's core. Elira raised the sigil, chanting every divine name she knew. Light surged. Vorthon screamed, not in pain, but in shock, and then he burned, not with void, not with hate, but with truth. The hollow sanctum exploded in a column of divine light visible across Thalanor. Obsidian rained like glass. The sea stilled. The sky cleared. Kael and Elira awoke amidst rubble and silence. Tharos was gone. Only his hammer remained. The hollow sanctum was no more. Where once an obsidian fortress had floated on black lee lines, there now remained only scorched ocean and a ring of still light, like a wound in the world, stitched shut by divine fire. Kael awoke with blood in his mouth, and Solbrand smouldering beside him. Elira lay not far, cradling the light-shard sigil, its glow faint, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Smoke curled into the dawn, and the waves that once crashed with fury now whispered gently against stone. But Tharos was gone. His hammer, the hammer of saints, rested upright in the sand, unburned, planted like a gravestone, Kaelin knelt before it. "Durak has claimed his son," Elira said softly, her voice raw. "He bought us this chance." Kaelin stood slowly. "Then we honor him. We finish this." The final pulse, though Vorthan's body had burned in holy fire, the void he left behind had not fully closed. The air still shimmered with corrupted memory. The final echo of the flame, Eater lingered, a spiritual wound deeper than flesh trying to pull itself back together. In the heart of the crater, amid molten stone and glassed sand, a rift pulsed like a black star. From it came whispers, pleas and promises, threats and temptations. Kaelin and Elira stepped toward it, their relics glowing once more. "One final blow," Kaelin said, "and the light prevails, or falls forever," the voice replied. The rift burst open, one final time. The flame, Eater reborn, Vorthan returned not as a titan of fire and ash, but as a wraith of divine betrayal. His form flickered. An outline of golden wings turned black, a halo made of teeth, a heart of broken relics. He hovered above the crater, his voice now one with the wind. "You destroyed my body," he hissed. "But you carry my flame in your doubt." He struck. Not with fire, but with memory. Elira saw her sisters dying in Velrin again, her censer slipping from her fingers. Kaelin saw Terran's last scream. Relive the moment he chose duty over kin. They staggered, chained by guilt. But then Kaelin raised Solbrand, placing its blade against his chest. Alien's light was never about perfection. Only redemption. The blade flared. The illusions shattered. Elira stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "I carry the lost with me, not as shame, as promise." Together they stepped into the air. The gods answered. Divine ascension for the first time in centuries, the trine of light unified. Alien's sun burst from the clouds. Seraphine's veil of wind parted the horizon. Durak's strength echoed from the stone below. Kaelin's armor blazed like the dawn itself. Solbrand stretched into a radiant spear. Elira's censer burst into a star of chains and flame, the light-shard sigil floating above her heart. They rose to meet Vorthan in the sky, among clouds scorched by centuries of war. He screamed as divine power clashed with shadow fire. The final battle was not one of blades, but of will. Vorthan's voice echoed into their minds. "You fear me because I am truth. I am what comes after hope fails. I am the ash of every prayer unanswered." Kaelin answered through gritted teeth. "No. You are what we become when we surrender. You are cowardice clothed in flame." Elira cried out in a voice louder than the wind. "You will not be remembered, only redeemed. In your destruction." Together they struck. Light and void collided in a scream of creation. The heavens cracked. The rift howled and collapsed inward. Vorthan's final scream was not of rage. It was of surprise. As if, for the first time, he realized the light was not a weapon. It was a choice. Aftermath, the war ended not in thunder, but in stillness. The rift sealed, the flame silenced. The sky, for the first time in years, was blue. Kaelin and Elira stood at the edge of a new dawn. Behind them, the sea shimmered. Before them, the world healed slowly. Thalanor's kingdoms lit their beacons once more. Temples were rebuilt, relics reconsecrated, orders renewed. Tharos's hammer was entombed at the summit of Durak's spine. The dwarves carved his name into the mountain itself. Kaelin returned to Highcrest, but only to pass on his sword. Solbrand was mounted above the hall of the Dawnguard, flames eternal. Elira became High Priestess of the reclaimed Veil. She never took another title, only guided those who had lost their light back toward it. In time, songs were written. They did not call them heroes. They called them reminders of what happens when hope is kept, when guilt is faced, when light is not something you follow, but something you become. Thus ends the tale of the Light of Three. But in the land of Thalanor, the flame never rests for long, and somewhere Deep beneath a forgotten ruin, another shadow stirs. The lesser drake hit the stone platform like a thunderclap, claws sparking against the molten rock. Its eyes locked onto Kael, biddy, furious, and intelligent. Not a mindless beast, a sentinel. Ashfang had left it here deliberately, and now it moved to kill. Kael didn't flinch. The wormfang pike hissed cold, the frost vial still active. He lunged first, closing the distance before the drake could draw another breath. The spear tip struck scale, hard, but not hardened like Ashfang's. The impact staggered the drake, ice spider webbing across its shoulder. It howled in pain. It lashed out. Kael dove sideways, narrowly missing a snapping maw lined with jagged teeth. The drake swung its tail like a whip, and Kael caught it full, on with his shield arm. The impact cracked his ribs and hurled him backward, skidding across the hot stone. He slammed into a stalagmite, the heat searing his coat. The drake charged again. Kael spat blood, rolled, and triggered his grapple. A coil of enchanted cable shot from his belt, and latched onto a stone arch above. He swung upward, soaring just over the drake's head as it barreled past. From midair, he drew his secondary weapon, a compact repeater crossbow, and let loose 3 bolts in rapid succession. The first pinged off armor. The second struck the wing joint. The third embedded deep into the neck. The beast shrieked and reared back. Kael landed on its back with a crunch. One hand wrapped around a horn, the other drove a frost-charged dagger into the base of its skull. The drake thrashed. It tried to throw him off, wings beating furiously. He held on, grit in his teeth, until at last the blade pierced into the brainstem. The drake gave a final shudder, then collapsed with a heavy groan, its body smoking against the superheated stone. Kael rolled off, panting. His side throbbed where the tail had caught him. He tasted blood and copper. "No time for pain," he hissed. He turned toward the vast cavern beyond. Now there was no barrier between him and Ashfang. The dragon lay coiled around a mountain of fused gold and obsidian, its scales like molten armor, tail curled protectively around a glowing heart of red crystal embedded in its chest. Its wings were torn from ancient battles, yet still spread wider than siege towers, and from its mouth smoke curled with every breath. Then its eyes opened, like twin furnaces burning with hatred and awareness. It had sensed him. Ashfang rose. Kael braced. The ground shook as the great beast shifted, volcanic debris tumbling into magma pits below. It uncoiled, rising to its full height. 30 feet of wrath and flame, with horns curved back like blades and molten saliva dripping from its jaws. Then it roared. The sound split the cavern, a pressure wave of heat and fury that knocked Kael off his feet. The gold beneath Ashfang's claws melted further, liquefying as the dragon's body blazed brighter. Kael ran. He sprinted toward a high ridge on the cavern's right flank. Ashfang inhaled and unleashed a torrent of fire. Kael dove behind a boulder just as the world turned white hot. His shield flared to life, runes glowing as it deflected the worst of the flame. Still, the heat singed his back, the stone sizzling beneath him. When the fire ceased, Kael sprang up, fired his grapple toward an overhang, and swung across a gap toward a narrow ledge, positioning himself directly above the dragon's flank. He needed to strike the heart. He pulled a runed scroll from his pouch and bit off the wax seal. The air around him dropped sharply, an aura of pure frost forming around his body. Ice formed on his lashes even in this infernal place. Then he leapt. Kael dropped from the ledge, landing hard on Ashfang's back. The dragon roared in fury, twisting and bucking, molten scales burning through Kael's boots. He drove the wormfang pike down, once, twice, but the scales around the chest held fast. Ashfang rolled. Kael went flying. He struck a column hard, and his vision went white. He hit the ground in a sprawl, the wind knocked from him. His body screamed in protest, ribs grinding. The dragon advanced. It reared, preparing to crush him beneath a claw larger than a warhorse. Kael reached for a flask. Anything. His fingers barely gripping a nullifier charge, he flung it. The charge struck the claw just before impact. A pulse of blue exploded outward, disrupting the dragon's internal fire. The claw missed him by inches, slamming down beside his head with a spray of shattered stone. Kael rolled, gasping, and staggered to his feet. He was running out of time. Ashfang was adapting, learning. The beast had endured ages of war. It would not fall from brute force alone. He needed help, and he remembered the map. Deep in the lower left quadrant of the cavern, half buried under slag and ash, was a dwarven forge temple, marked in the guild's ancient charts, supposedly lost during the cataclysmic dragonfall centuries ago. If it still stood, it might hold weapons left behind by Thalanor's original dragon slayers. Kael took off running, narrowly dodging a burst of flame that melted the ledge behind him. Ashfang gave chase, furious and unrelenting, its claws gouging the earth as it thundered after the hunter who dared draw B. Kael sprinted into the dark, deeper into the chasm as the firestorm raged behind him. The temperature dropped slightly, not from escape but descent. The ancient path he followed wound through a cragged, forgotten split in the cavern, veiled by slag and years of collapse. He ducked low, crawled under a half-buried arch, and emerged into a tunnel untouched by fire. The air shifted, cooler, stale, ancient. The walls here bore carvings, worn but still visible, hammer and anvil motifs, dwarven runes, and depictions of dragons bound in chains of lightning. The seal above the next door made Kael stop and press his palm to it. "Kazman's bastion," he murmured. "The Forge of Skyfire?" He'd read about it in guild archives. A myth. A forge built by the ember-forged dwarves during the Dragonfall, meant to craft weapons using Skyfire essence, raw lightning tempered in enchanted steel. It was thought lost after a volcanic collapse during Ashfang's first awakening 300 years ago. Kael pushed forward. The iron door groaned as it opened inward, revealing a cavernous hall swallowed in shadows. Massive stone anvils stood like pillars, with broken chains hanging from the ceiling. Empty armor racks lined the walls, and ancient forges sat dormant, cold and cracked. But one forge still glowed, dimly, just enough to catch his eye. Kael approached. Runes pulsed faintly on the black stone surface, as if sensing his presence. This was no ordinary forge. The glyphs were old sundering era, reacting to his blood, to the essence carried by all guild hunters descended from the old orders. "Still alive, are you?" a voice rasped. Kael froze. From behind the forge, a shape moved. Small, hunched, armored in suit and bronze. A dwarf, ancient beyond reason, beard braided with silver wire, eyes glowing faintly blue. "Who?" "Name's Brumund Ainville, Tamer," the dwarf interrupted. "Forgekeeper. Last of the Skyfire Brotherhood." He coughed a cinder. "You here to slay the beast, I reckon." Kael nodded slowly, lowering his pike. "Ashfang, I've wounded it, but not enough. Its heart is fused to a bloodstone. I need a way to pierce both." Brumund spat into the fire. "Then you'll need Skyfire steel. Wait here." He vanished into the back tunnels, and Kael took the moment to remove his armor's upper layers, revealing deep bruises across his ribs and shoulder. He hissed as he poured a cooling salve over a burn on his left flank, then replaced his coat, and slung the Wormfang pike onto the anvil. Minutes later, Brumund returned, dragging a long cloth-wrapped bundle. He unwrapped it with reverence. Inside lay a spearhead of shimmering steel, sky blue, veined with crackling threads of energy. The moment Kael touched it, his runestone eye flared. "Skyfire essence," Brumund said. "Forged to kill worms, not just cut, shatter their hearts." Kael worked fast. He removed the pike's head and fixed the new spearhead with a locking rune. Brumund handed him a thin, fluted vial. What's this? Lightning blood. One stab into the crystal with that tip, and this'll flow into the heart. The overload will break the bloodstone's connection to the dragon. You'll have a moment, no more. Kael nodded grimly. Brumund grinned. Been a long time since anyone made it down here. Kill that bastard, good boy. The mountain's tired of burning. Aback at the cavern's edge, Ashfang prowled the molten lake, smoke billowing from its nostrils. It had returned to its hoard, though its wounds still smoked with residual frost. One eye was clouded, Kael's earlier bolt still embedded in its skull. It was restless, alert, but wounded. Kael emerged from the shadows above, stalking the high ridgeline that curved along the chasm's rim. He planted 3 rune, charges at strategic points along the cliff. If Ashfang flew, he could collapse the ceiling. If it climbed, he could collapse the wall. He took position on a stone spire overlooking the horde. Then, with his last cold flame bolt, he fired. The shot struck Ashfang's flank, and this time the dragon screamed, not in pain, in rage. It turned with terrifying speed, wings flaring, molten gold spraying behind it. It rose, mouth glowing. Kael leapt from the spire as the firestorm roared past. He landed hard, rolled, and sprinted toward the heart of the horde. Toward the bloodstone. Ashfang lunged. Claws gouged the stone just behind him. Lava surged around them, boiling from vents stirred by the dragon's rage. Kael ran full tilt, eyes locked on the glowing red gem embedded in the dragon's chest. He could see it now, throbbing in rhythm with Ashfang's breaths, veins of red magic pumping into its heart. He activated the Skyfire glyph on his gauntlet. The spearhead hummed, sparks danced across the steel. For Thalanor, Kael growled, and charged. Kael ran into hell. The molten stone of Ashfang's hoard cracked and trembled underfoot. Golden veins split open, pouring lava as the dragon rose to its full height. The blood, crystal embedded in its chest pulsing with sick, red light. Its roar echoed like a mountain collapsing, a sound that made Kael's bones vibrate. Heat blasted from the beast's body in waves, turning the air itself into a weapon. Still, Kael pressed forward. The Skyfire spear hummed in his grip, lightning crawling along its shaft like living veins. His gauntlet burned where it touched the energized steel. He could feel the weapon's purpose, its hunger to pierce the bloodstone and end the nightmare. Ashfang saw him. It reared, fire gathering in its throat. The glow expanded, orange to white to blinding gold. Kael dove behind a spire of melted iron just as the firestorm unleashed. Flame obliterated the world. The spire exploded into slag. Kael's warding glyphs flared to life, protecting him from immolation by a thread. His coat burned at the edges. His shield cracked and hissed. He burst from the fire, eyes stinging, and hurled a frost charge at Ashfang's feet. Boom. Steam erupted, lava hardened into jagged ice glass, locking the dragon stance for just 2 seconds. That was enough. Kael used his grapple line to zip forward, straight toward the beast's exposed underbelly. He triggered the rune, boost and vaulted, arsing through ash and fire. He saw the heart clearly now. The bloodstone pulsed, protected only by heat-hardened scale. He raised the spear. Ashfang twisted. A wing slammed into him mid-air. Kael flew sideways, hit the cavern wall like a thrown doll. Pain screamed up his back. The spear skittered from his hand and clanged across the stone. He gasped, ribs broken, shoulder dislocated. Smoke and fire swirled around him. Ashfang didn't pause. It came for him, jaws open, fire roaring in its throat. Kael fumbled with a flask, not frost, not nullfire, his last resort. The chaos vial, he yanked the cork and slammed it into the ground. The world twisted. A pulse of arcane disruption flared outward, shattering reality for a heartbeat. Gravity flipped. Ashfang staggered, confused, its head jerking to one side. For just a moment, Kael had breathing room. He gritted his teeth, and popped his shoulder back into place with a howl. Then he ran. He dived for the spear, sliding under molten debris as Ashfang recovered. The beast charged again, this time on all fours, jaws snapping, lava boiling in its wake. The very floor cracked beneath its steps. Kael didn't look back. He grabbed the spear, spun, and threw a rune dagger at the bloodstone. It struck, a weak hit, but enough to draw the dragon's attention. Ashfang reared, chest exposed, heart pulsing violently. Kael sprinted, leapt from a pile of gold, and plunged the Skyfire spear into the bloodstone. The reaction was immediate. The spear sank deep. Lightning asked across Ashfang's body. The Skyfire enchantment surged. Overloading the corrupted magic fused to the dragon's heart. The bloodstone cracked. Ashfang screamed. A sound like a dying star. Its wings flared wide, its body convulsed. Lava burst from the walls. The entire cavern quaked. The spear vibrated violently in Kael's hands as the bloodstone shattered, releasing a shock-wave of pure energy. Kael was thrown backward, slammed into a column that crumbled on impact. Ashfang collapsed, thrashing, its chest burning from within. Fire bled from its eyes and mouth. It staggered, one wing broken, claws gouging deep scars in the rock. But it was still alive, wounded, blinded, dying, but not dead. Kael rose, barely standing, blood pouring from his side. His eye lens was cracked, his limbs trembled. But he moved. He had to finish it. Ashfang turned slowly, one eye gone, heart cavity glowing like a forge. Kael raised his broken shield, stepped forward. Then the ceiling groaned. The cavern above, already weakened by fire and battle, began to collapse. Chunks of molten stone rained down. Kael looked up and smiled. He reached to his belt, pulled out the rune detonator connected to the glyph charges he'd planted before. Ashfang roared, sensing its end. Kael whispered, "Burn in your grave." He triggered the charges. Boom, boom, boom. The upper ridge exploded. A wall of magma and stone caved in. Ashfang raised its head to roar one last time before thousands of tons of rock crashed down, burying the dragon in fire and ruin. The shockwave hurled Kael from the platform. He fell, hard, into darkness. Then everything went still. Darkness held him. Kael floated in it, the pain distant, weightless. Then the smell of smoke returned, heat on his skin, the copper sting of blood in his mouth. Awareness clawed its way back. He coughed once, then again, harder, spitting ash. Rubble pressed down on his chest, pinning one leg and part of his arm. He couldn't see. His runestone lens was cracked, dark. But he could feel the fire beyond the debris, still pulsing. Ashfang wasn't dead, buried but not slain. The spear hadn't pierced deep enough. The bloodstone had cracked, yes, but not shattered. The collapse had crippled the beast, but its heart still burned. Kael could feel the dragon's fury echoing through the stone. A slow seismic beat. He grit his teeth and reached for the glyph on his gauntlet. It still pulsed faintly, Skyfire energy flickering. He focused all his will, releasing the reserve charge. Blue lightning snapped across his arm, disintegrating the rock around him. The smell of burning sulfur filled the air. With a scream, Kael wrenched himself free, dragging his battered body from beneath the wreckage. He staggered upright. The chamber was ruined, ash falling like snow, gold melted to rivers of brass. But there, half buried in the center, lay Ashfang, collapsed, crushed, one wing torn away, lower jaw cracked and hanging. But its chest still glowed, a smouldering wound where the bloodstone pulsed, veins of corrupted magic still alive. Kael limped forward. His coat had burned away. His armor was cracked. One eye was blind, and blood soaked his thigh from a deep gash. But he walked. The spear was still embedded in the dragon's chest. Ashfang stirred, barely. Its eye cracked open, burning dimly. Kael climbed the beast's shattered forelimb. His boots slipped on blood and molten scale. He reached the spear, wrapped both hands around it, and pushed Ashfang growled, a low, guttural rumble of pain and hate. Kael snarled back, "You die now." He pulled the lightning flask Brumund had given him, the heart vial, and shattered it against the shaft of the spear. The reaction was instant. Lightning surged into the bloodstone. The glow in Ashfang's chest blazed white hot. The dragon reared once, jaw wide, and let out one final roar, a sound so loud it shattered Kael's remaining lens and echoed across the mountains. Then the light imploded. Kael was thrown through the air, tumbling down the dragon's spine. He hit the horde hard, landing in a pool of melted gold. Ashfang spasmed. The glow in its chest winked out. Smoke billowed from its mouth. Then the dragon moved no more. Its body slumped forward, tongue spilling from its jaw, claws twitching once, and going still, dead. Kael lay still for a long moment, staring up at the roof of the cavern, what was left of it. Then he laughed, a dry, cracked sound. "By the gods," he whispered, "it's done." He rose slowly, every movement a scream of pain. He limped to the beast's corpse, reached up and broke off a crimson scale, dense, nearly indestructible, but still warm to the touch. Proof of the kill. The guild would need it. He gathered what supplies he could from the ruined hoard: alchemical flasks, broken armor, bits, a dwarven medallion. Enough to survive the way out. He passed by the bloodstone's remains, a shattered crystal heart, still flickering faintly. He considered destroying it entirely, but thought better of it. Too dangerous to leave, yes, but too valuable to ignore. A relic of the forgotten gods. The guild would want to study it. If they could understand what corrupted Ashfang, they could prevent it from happening again. Or harness it. Kael wasn't sure which outcome terrified him more. He wrapped the crystal in a thick bandage of dragonhide and placed it carefully into a rune, sealed pouch. Then one last look at Ashfang, once a guardian of balance, then a tyrant of flame, now a monument to death. The path out was brutal. Kael ascended slowly, often crawling, dragging his damaged body across scorched stone. Lava still bubbled in side passages, and aftershocks from the collapsed chamber made every step treacherous. He paused only once, at the threshold of the cave. There, rising through the smoke, he saw it the dawn. Cool blue sky, clean air. Distant birdsong. The land beyond the moor had begun to breathe again. He stepped into the light. Smoke curled from his armor. His body ached with 100 wounds, but he stood, alive. The sky was clean. Clouds drifted like silk banners above the ridges of Karzol's moor. Below them, the smoke had thinned, revealing a scorched but living world. Forests still smouldered at their edges, rivers ran sluggish and warm, but they ran. Life, persistent and quiet, began to reclaim what fire had not utterly devoured. Kael Draven limped down the mountainside. Every breath was pain. His side was bound in salvaged wormhide, ribs splintered with broken spear shafts. One arm hung limp, his shoulder torn from the final blast that ended Ashfang. His coat was gone. His armor flaked from heat, warped plates. Only his boots remained intact, and even they hissed with each step as they touched the ashen path. But he walked. At his belt swung a pouch lined with cauldrons, glowing faintly, the remains of the bloodstone. Above it hung a crimson dragon scale, etched with the guild's sigil. His proof. The world needed to know Ashfang, the crimson worm, was dead. 3 days passed before he reached the first outpost. The guards of Fort Keldros did not recognize him at first, scarred, half-burned, coated in soot and blood. But the scale he held changed everything. Riders were sent ahead to Irathwin. Priests treated his wounds. Smiths brought clean water. No bards were summoned, no feasts prepared. That would come later. Kael asked only for a chair, a bottle of clear-fire whiskey, and silence. He sat beneath a half-burned tree just outside the gates, watching the smoke drift across the horizon. A raven landed nearby. It cawed once, then flew off toward the guild. The message would spread. 2 weeks later, back in Erethwyn, the Grand Hall of the Monster Hunter Guild was abuzz. The Ashen Scale, Kael's trophy, rested in a rune-sealed chamber, alongside legendary relics from other great hunts. The shattered bloodstone was taken into arcane custody. Mages whispered of its origin, not merely a corruptive force, but a fragment of a god's memory. Dangerous knowledge. Some called for its destruction, others for its study. Kael had no say in it. He stood before the high table, his report complete. The guildmasters offered gold honors, a personal banner in the hall. Songs would be written, statues cast. He declined them all. "Write it down," he said. "But leave my name off it." The guildmaster frowned. "You earned your place in the stories." Kael turned, eye narrowed. "Stories inspire fools. Let the record show the beast is dead. That's enough." And with that he walked away. Later he returned to the forge of Brumund Envil, tamer, deep in the mountainside. The old dwarf was alive, barely. His beard shorter, singed by the collapse. The forge glowed dimly now, the skyfire flame flickering out for the last time. "You did it," Brumund rasped. Kael laid the broken spearhead on the anvil. "It wasn't just me." "You forged the weapon," Brumund smiled. But you wielded it." The dwarf offered a flask. Kael took it. They drank in silence. Behind them, the forge went cold. When spring came, the ashes gave way to green. Shoots rose from the scorched ground. Ember Hollow, the village once burned to cinders, began to rebuild. The people spoke in hushed voices of a hunter who'd slain the fire worm. Children carved dragons in the dirt with sticks and called them Ashfang. Some even named their dogs Kael. The guild sent new scouts to monitor the moor. No heat signature remained. No seismic rumble. The cavern had collapsed fully, buried beneath tons of stone and the skeleton of an empire of flame. Ashfang was gone, but not forgotten. Kael disappeared shortly after. Some said he returned to the marshes where his first hunt began. Others believed he sailed north to the Iron Coast to hunt kraken. A few whispered he'd taken the bloodstone with him, seeking to cast it into the abyss. No one knew for certain. Only one message was ever received, carved into the base of the guild's stone lion at Erethwyn's gate. 7 words, plain and weathered by time. Another flame snuffed. For now, KD, end of Ashfang's lair. A tale of Thalanor,